Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the shadows of ancient Egypt to uncover why it absolutely sucked to be a slave building. The pyramids, those colossal tombs that swallowed lives like the Nile devours the unwary. Imagine this, you jolt awake with the desert sand searing your bare back like a branding iron, the heat already clawing at your skin before the sun has fully crested the horizon, and chains digging into your ankles as if they've grown roots overnight. Did you know that over 2 million limestone blocks, each weighing as much as a modern SUV, were hauled into place by sheer human grit, turning what should have been a pharaoh's dream into a nightmare for thousands, or that archaeologists have unearthed skeletons twisted with arthritis and crushed vertebrae, painting a picture of endless toil that shortened lives to a mere whisper? What if I told you some historians still argue these weren't slaves at all, but skilled workers conscripted for the glory of the gods, yet here you are, bound and broken, wondering if freedom was ever more than a myth whispered in the dark? Wouldn't you question how a civilization so advanced in math and stars could reduce people to beasts of burden, their sweat evaporating into the same air that carried pharaohs to eternity? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I love seeing how far this sleepy little time machine reaches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You feel the grains of sand grinding against your eyelids as you blink them open, the relentless bite of the scorching sand beneath you like a bed of embers that never cools, even in the pre-dawn chill that clings to your sweat-soaked skin like a mocking veil, and the heavy iron chains around your wrists and ankles tug sharply as the overseer's distant whip cracks echo through the camp, a sound that's become as familiar as your own ragged breathing. Your body aches from yesterday's labor, muscles screaming in protest like overworked cables ready to snap, and the metallic tang of blood lingers on your tongue where you bit your lip during the night to stifle cries that would only invite more punishment. As the first rays of Ra pierce the horizon, painting the vast desert in hues of blood and gold, you push yourself up on trembling arms, the chain links clinking like sinister bells, biting deeper into the raw flesh they've chafed for weeks. Months. How long has it been since you were ripped from your village along the Nile, where the muddy waters smelled of fertile promise, rather than this endless dust that coats your throat and stings your eyes? You glance around at the sea of huddled forms, fellow captives from Nubia, Libya, or even your own Egyptian kin, all stirring under the same invisible lash, their faces etched with the same hollow resignation. And you wonder if the pharaoh Khufu, whose monstrous tomb looms in the distance like a jagged mountain defying the gods, ever spares a thought for the ants building his stairway to the afterlife. Historians still debate whether folks like you are true slaves or just conscripted labourers, paid in bread and beer. But try telling that to the whip scars crisscrossing your back, worse than enduring a never-ending Zoom call with a boss who micromanages your every breath. A fascinating tidbit floats through your mind amid the haze these overseers sometimes ration out onions and garlic, not just for flavour, but because the ancients believed they warded off evil spirits and illness, as if a vegetable could shield you from the real demons of exhaustion and despair. You shuffle into line as the guards bark orders in guttural Coptic, their bronze-tipped whips slicing the air like vengeful serpents, and one of them yanks your chain harder, sending a jolt of pain up your leg that makes stars dance in your vision, the scorching sand now shifting underfoot like a living thing, eager to swallow you whole. The smell of unwashed bodies mingles with the faint, acrid scent of Nile mud baked dry on tools left out overnight. A recurring reminder that water is both life and torment here, plentiful for floating massive stones from distant quarries, yet doled out sparingly to parched throats like yours. You spot a young boy, no older than 12, chained nearby, his eyes wide with the fresh terror of someone newly arrived, and a pang of empathy twists in your gut. He reminds you of your own son back home, if he's still alive, farming the floodplains without you, and the shocking sadness of it hits like a stone to the chest. How many families have been shattered for this pyramid, this eternal vanity project that will outlast empires but erase the names of those who bled for it? Ah, the irony of it all, building a monument to immortality while your own life expectancy plummets faster than a bad stock in today's market, where at least you get coffee breaks and hazard pay. As the line forms, A physical shove from behind propels you forward, the guard's rough hand like sandpaper on your shoulder, and you stumble, catching yourself before face-planting into the dust that would grind into your wounds like salt in a fresh cut. The whip cracks closer now, not on flesh yet, but close enough to make your skin crawl in anticipation. A sensory struggle that builds with every step, the heat rising as the sun climbs, turning the air into a furnace that steals your breath and blurs the edges of the world. You pass by the remnants of last night's meagre meal crusts of barley bread scattered like forgotten offerings, and your stomach growls. A hollow ache that sarcasm can't quell. Oh sure, the Pharaoh promises you'll be honoured in the afterlife, but right now, you'd trade eternity for a single day without chains. Folded into this dawn ritual is a factual sliver from the annals of time around 2580 BC. Khufu mobilized up to 20,000 workers seasonally, flooding the plateau with bodies during the Nile's inundation when farms lay fallow, turning idleness into enforced productivity that built wonders at the cost of human spirit. A clever commentary whispers in your weary mind because nothing bonds a workforce like the threat of divine wrath if the ramps aren't ready by midday. Zooming out for a moment, the pyramid rises in the distance like a colossal shadow devouring the dawn. Its unfinished tiers a testament to human ambition's cruel poetry, where stone upon stone echoes the layered suffering of generations, and the vast desert stretches endlessly, a golden sea indifferent to your plight. You reach the water station, a trough of murky Nile runoff that tastes of silt and desperation, and as you gulp it down, spilling over your chin, the chain bites anew with every movement, a persistent motif mutating from dull throb to sharp reminder that freedom is as distant as the stars the priests say align with these tombs. Suddenly, a shocking event unfolds. An older man ahead collapses without a sound, his body folding like a discarded rag, face pressed into the scorching sand, and the guards merely prod him with boots, declaring him unfit before dragging him away to who knows where, perhaps the bone pits where the fallen are buried without ceremony. A sad element that chills you deeper than any night wind. You avert your eyes, sarcasm bubbling up as a defense well. At least he gets to rest now, unlike the rest of us playing eternal tug-of-war with gravity. The line surges forward again. The whip cracks, multiplying like thunder on the horizon, and you feel the collective pulse of fear and defiance in the air. A modern parallel to those soul-crushing assembly lines where quotas rule lives. But here, failure means lashes instead of layoffs. As the camp awakens fully, tents flapping in the hot breeze like weary flags of surrender, you spot the first ramps leading up the pyramid's flank, slick with yesterday's sweat and dust, and a twist of dread coils in your belly. What fresh hell awaits today? Hauling blocks that could crush a man in an instant. The overseer's voice booms, assigning gangs, and yours is called for the quarry run, the chain tugging you toward the edge of camp where tools await, their copper edges dulled from endless use but still capable of drawing blood if mishandled. Another tidbit surfaces amid the chaos workers like you sometimes fashioned makeshift pads from papyrus reeds to cushion the chains. A small act of ingenuity against the bite that never fully heals. The sun now blazes fully, turning the sand into a mirror of fire that reflects back your exhaustion. And as you march, the distant Nile glimmers mockingly, its muddy aroma carried on the wind, promising relief that's always just out of reach. Empathy swells for the boy beside you, his small hands already calloused, and you mutter a quiet word of advice: keep your head down, save your strength knowing it's futile against the machine of empire. The whip cracks once more, closer, urging speed, and pain flares in your ankle where the iron has rubbed a fresh sore, a sensory motif evolving into a throbbing pulse that syncs with your heartbeat. Zooming out again, the plateau unfolds like a vast canvas of ambition, where the pyramid's base swallows the horizon, a geometric scar on the earth that speaks of Pharaoh's hubris, and the workers' ant-like forms dot the landscape, their struggles a silent symphony under the unblinking eye of Ra. You arrive at the tool shed, a ramshackle hut of reeds and mud, and grab a wooden lever, its handle worn smooth by countless palms, the weight familiar yet burdensome, like carrying your own fate. A guard eyes you suspiciously, his sarcasm evident in a sneer: move faster, or join the fallen. The group sets off toward the quarry, chains clanking in unison, the scorching sand shifting treacherously underfoot, each step a battle against slippage and strain. Suddenly, a sad cry rises from behind a woman. In another gang weeps for her collapsed companion, her voice cutting through the din like a knife, highlighting the human cost buried beneath these stones. You push on, ironic thoughts drifting, building for gods who seem deaf to please, much like scrolling through endless feeds today, chasing likes that never satisfy. The path narrows, flanked by half-carved blocks abandoned mid-effort, monuments to failed attempts, and the air thickens with dust that coats your lungs, making every breath a laboured gasp. As the quarry looms, its jagged walls scarred by chisels, you feel the chain's bite mutate once more, now chafing with sweat's salty sting, a reminder that even small mercies like shade are rationed here. The overseer halts the line, pointing to your task, prying loose a massive slab, and as you bend to it, muscles igniting in protest. A psychological chill settles how many more dawns like this before the pyramid claims you entirely. The stone resists, grinding against your lever, and in that moment, the vast structure in the distance seems to pulse with malevolent life, its shadow stretching toward you like fingers eager to pull you under, leaving you to ponder if escape is just a fever dream in this endless cycle of sand and suffering. Did you ever wonder how the ancient Egyptians, masters of engineering who aligned pyramids with the stars, could treat human lives as disposable as the papyrus they wrote on, with estimates suggesting up to 100,000 souls cycled through the Giza Plateau over decades, their bones later revealing chronic malnutrition and injuries that make modern construction sites look like playgrounds. You feel the dust kicking up in swirling clouds as the chain gang lurches forward, each particle invading your nostrils like tiny invaders from the underworld, coating your tongue with a gritty film that tastes of baked earth and forgotten rains, while your muscles, already knotted from the night's uneasy rest on that scorching sand, begin to scream in protest as if every fibre is unravelling under the strain of the pull. The overseer's whip cracks again, not on your back this time, but on the air just above, sending a shiver through the line that mutates the familiar bite of your chains into a throbbing pulse synchronized with the collective footsteps. The iron now warmed by the rising sun and pressing into your skin like heated brands eager to mark you anew. As you trudge through the dawn's dust, the path to the quarry unfolds like a serpent's trail, uneven and treacherous, forcing you to drag your feet through mounds of fine powder that shift and suck at your soles. A sensory struggle that turns every step into a battle against sinking, your calves burning as if filled with molten lead, and the acrid smell of sweat-soaked hides from the oxen teams ahead mingles with the faint, muddy aroma of the distant Nile, now evolving into a taunting whisper carried on the breeze, reminding you of home's fertile banks where water flowed freely instead of this parched exile. A physical jolt hits when the chain ahead yanks taut, the boy from earlier stumbling over a loose rock, pulling you forward in a domino of imbalance that sends pain shooting up your spine like arrows from an unseen archer, and you catch yourself just in time, palms scraping against the rough ground, embedding more dust into cuts that never heal. Oh, the irony of it, hauling stones for a tomb meant to defy time while your own body decays faster than a forgotten loaf in the sun, worse than grinding through a 9 to 5 with overtime that never ends. At least those come with weekends and coffee. Folded into this march is a factual thread from the sands of history. The pyramid's construction peaked during the Old Kingdom around 2600 BC, when pharaohs like Khufu commanded vast labour forces drawn from conquered lands, and even their own peasants during flood seasons, transforming agricultural downtime into monumental drudgery that fed the gods' egos. A fascinating tidbit emerges in your haze of exhaustion. Workers sometimes chewed radishes mixed with salt not just for sustenance, but because the Egyptians oddly believed it purified the blood and warded off scorpion stings, as if a root vegetable could compete with the real venom of whips and workload. Historians still argue whether this system was outright slavery or a form of corvée labour, where duty to the state masked the chains with rhetoric of divine service. But try debating that when the next whip crack lands close enough to raise welts on your neighbour's arm. You spot the overseer now, a burly figure named Amenhotep revisiting that shadowy presence from the camp's edge. But with a surprising twist, whispers among the gang reveal he's not just a taskmaster, but a former conscript himself, risen through cruelty to avoid the lash, his eyes holding a flicker of buried empathy that makes his barked orders all the more chilling. The dust thickens as you near the quarry's mouth, a yawning pit carved into the plateau like a wound in the earth's flesh, and the air grows heavier with the metallic tang of chisels on stone. Mutating, the chains bite into a symphony of clinks that echo off the walls, each one a reminder of your entrapment. A shocking sadness washes over you when the boy whimpers softly, his small frame trembling under the weight of his own chains, revealing blistered feet that ooze with every step. A light dramatization of innocence crushed under ambition's heel. How many children like him have been fed to this machine, their futures buried before they could bloom? Sarcasm bubbles up as a shield sure. The pharaoh promises you'll join the stars in the afterlife. But right now, you'd settle for a pair of sandals that don't feel like walking on coals. Zooming out for a breath, the quarry sprawls below like a chaotic amphitheatre of suffering, where hammers ring out in discordant rhythm and dust veils the workers like ghosts in a forgotten ritual. The vast pyramid silhouette on the horizon, a mocking sentinel overseeing it all. You descend the ramp, chains dragging furrows in the dust, and a guard shoves you toward a cluster of half-hewn blocks, the stone's rough texture biting into your hands as you grip the lever, muscles protesting louder now, screaming like overtaxed engines on the verge of failure. The smell of fresh-cut limestone assaults you, sharp and chalky, blending with the evolving Nile mud scent into something almost nauseating, a sensory motif that clings to your clothes and skin like an unwanted second layer. Suddenly, a physical event erupts, a slab shifts unexpectedly under collective heave, tilting precariously and pinning a man's leg nearby, his muffled groan cutting through the din, as guards rush in not with aid but with urgency to free the stone first. The man's pain secondary to progress, a sad element that twists your gut. Empathy surging for this stranger whose fate could be yours in a heartbeat. Clever commentary drifts through your mind because nothing says team building like risking limbs for a boss who's already dead in spirit. Much like those corporate retreats where trust falls end in actual falls. As the dust settles from the near mishap, you resume prying, sweat pouring down your face in rivulets that sting your eyes, the heat amplifying every ache until your vision blurs, and the chain's bite mutates yet again, chafing raw spots that weep under the friction. Another tidbit surfaces amid the toil ancient records on papyrus, show that beer was rationed daily not as a luxury, but as a wage laced with nutrients to keep bodies functioning, though it often soured in the heat, turning reward into reluctant medicine. The debate lingers in scholarly circles about whether these payments made it voluntary work or veiled coercion, but the whip's shadow dispels any illusion of choice. You glance at the boy again, now heaving alongside you, his face pale under the dust musk of grime, and offer a subtle nod of encouragement, a small act of defiance in this sea of submission. The sun climbs higher, turning the quarry into an oven where shadows shrink to nothing, and your throat parches despite the morning's sip, the dust now crawling into every crevice like insidious insects. A modern parallel hits. It's like being stuck in traffic during a heat wave with no AC, but instead of honks, it's whips, and escape is a fantasy. Zooming out once more, the pit echoes with the symphony of labor, chisels carving destiny from rock while the Nile's distant glint mocks from afar, a silver thread weaving through the golden wasteland, indifferent to the human tapestry unraveling below. As midday approaches, the overseer Amenhotep calls a brief halt, but not for rest, only to redistribute tools, his voice booming like thunder over the weary, and you slump against a block, chains pooling like serpents at your feet, the bite easing momentarily but promising worse with resumption. The boy's breathing comes in ragged gasps beside you, and you share a crust of bread from your pouch, the act drawing a wary glance from a guard, heightening the tension. Sarcasm whispers, the perks of the job, free dust baths and all-you-can-endure exercise. Better than any gym membership that bankrupts your soul. The break ends too soon, whips cracking to summon you back, and as you rise, muscles igniting anew in fiery protest, a chill settles despite the heat. How long until this quarry swallows you whole, body and spirit? The massive block before you looms like a judgmental giant, its veins of quartz catching the light in eerie patterns, casting shadows that dance mockingly across the dust-choked ground, leaving you to grapple with the encroaching despair that whispers of endless dawns just like this one. Have you ever pondered how the shadow of a single man, proclaimed a god on earth, could eclipse the lives of thousands, with Pharaoh Khufu's pyramid devouring an estimated 2.3 million blocks over 20 years, each one soaked in the sweat and blood of the forgotten, turning divine architecture into a monument of mortal misery. You feel the sun's merciless rays pounding down like hammers of injustice, scorching your exposed shoulders until the skin blisters and peels in angry red strips, the heat radiating up from the quarry floor in waves that distort the air and make your vision swim, while the chains bite, now mutated into a fiery ring from the midday blaze absorbing every ounce of solar fury, digs deeper into your ankles with each laboured step as you join the gang hauling the freshly cut slab toward the pyramid's base. The dust from the quarry clings to your sweat like a second, suffocating skin, evolving the Nile's muddy aroma into a thick, cloying haze that chokes your breaths and settles in your lungs like wet clay. A sensory struggle that turns every inhale into a rasp of protest against the dry, unrelenting air. As the massive stone sled creaks forward on wooden rollers greased with animal fat, the smell of rancid tallow mixing grotesquely with the evolving dust. Your muscles scream louder than before, pulling in unison with the others in a chain gang rhythm that feels like a funeral march under the Pharaoh's invisible gaze. A physical surge hits when the sled hits a rut, jolting the load sideways and forcing you to throw your full weight against the ropes, fibers cutting into your palms like barbed accusations, blood welling up to slick the hemp and make the grip treacherous, pain flaring in hot bursts that sink with the chain's mutated bite now pulsing with the strain. Oh, the bitter irony of it all, labouring to build a gateway to eternity for a ruler who views you as expendable as the reeds harvested from the Nile, worse than slaving away at a dead-end job, where at least the boss pretends to value your input during performance reviews. Folded seamlessly into this grueling trek is a factual echo from the depths of antiquity during the 4th dynasty, around 2580 BC. Pharaohs like Khufu centralized power to an extreme, conscripting labor from across the empire under the guise of religious duty, where refusal meant not just earthly punishment but spiritual damnation, as the afterlife was reserved for those who served the gods incarnate. A fascinating tidbit bubbles up through the haze of exertion workers occasionally fashion protective wrappings from discarded linen scraps soaked in natron salt, the same mineral used to mummify the elite, as if borrowing from the dead could shield the living from the living hell of their tasks. Scholars still hotly debate whether this workforce comprised true chattel slaves captured in wars or merely peasants fulfilling mandatory service, with some papyri suggesting payments in goods that barely sustained life, blurring the line between bondage and obligation in ways that make modern gig economy debates seem quaint. You catch sight of Amenhotep again, the overseer from the quarry's edge, but with a startling twist. He's not just enforcing orders, but whispering harshly to a guard about quotas, his face twisted in reluctant sympathy, revealing he's under pressure from higher scribes who tally progress for the pharaoh's vizier, turning him from mere tyrant into a cog in the same crushing machine. The pyramid's shadow begins to stretch toward you as the sun arcs westward, a colossal darkness that swallows the plateau like a predator's maw, and injustice burns fiercer than the heat when you witness a shocking scene. An elderly worker, his back bent like a question mark from years of toil, collapses under his rope, gasping, only for the guards to drag him aside without water or mercy, leaving him to bake in the sun as a warning, his faint pleas a sad melody that pierces your heart and stirs a deep empathy for this stranger, whose story mirrors your own unspoken fears. Sarcasm curls in your mind like smoke-splendid system, where the god's chosen one lounges in Thebes while you play human mule, building his ego one block at a time, much like scrolling through a billionaire's social media feed, envying vacations funded by underpaid labor, zooming out in a fleeting poetic breath. The Giza Plateau unfolds like a vast tapestry of ambition, woven with threads of suffering, where the Nile's silver ribbon winds eternally in the distance, indifferent to the shadows cast by man-made mountains that pierce the sky in defiant geometry. You push onward, the sled grinding forward inch by agonizing inch, the chains bite now, a constant flame licking at your flesh, mutated further by the friction of movement that rubs salt literal grains from the natron pads into wounds, while the evolving Nile scent carries hints of distant fertility, a cruel tease amid the barren rock. Suddenly, A guard barks at the boy from dawn, who's faltering under the rope's weight, his small hands raw and bleeding, and in a moment of light dramatization, the overseer intervenes not with kindness, but calculation, reassigning him to lighter duties lest he become another statistic slowing the divine project. A sad twist that highlights how even youth is commodified here. Expendable unless useful. Clever commentary drifts through your weary thoughts because nothing motivates like the fear of being replaced, akin to today's automation threats, where robots promise efficiency at the cost of souls. The group crests a small rise, the pyramid now dominating the view, its unfinished casing stones gleaming white in patches where the sun hits, a beacon of pharaonic glory that masks the filth and pain below. Your throat tightens with dust and unspoken rage as another worker mutters curses under his breath, drawing a whip's warning crack, the air splitting with tension that makes your skin prickle despite the heat. A modern parallel strikes. It's like being trapped in a corporate hierarchy, where the CEO's vision board is built on the backs of interns. But here, dissent invites lashes instead of HR meetings. Zooming out once more, the shadow of the structure envelops your path like a living entity, its angles sharp as judgments from the gods, while the endless desert whispers secrets of forgotten rebellions buried under sands that shift like treacherous loyalties. As the sled nears the base ramps, slick with sweat and spilled water from earlier hauls, you feel the injustice coiling tighter, a psychological weight heavier than any stone, when a guard singles you out for a perceived slowdown, his boot connecting with your side in a dull thud that knocks the wind from you, pain blooming like fire across your ribs. The boy glances back with wide eyes, his earlier terror now mingled with concern, forging an unspoken bond in this sea of isolation. The chain yanks you upright, bite intensifying with the jolt, and you resume pulling, every fibre protesting the unfairness that burns brighter than Ra himself. Another tidbit surfaces amid the strain ancient graffiti scratched into quarry walls by workers like you sometimes praised the pharaoh sarcastically. Hidden messages of defiance that archaeologists uncover today, proving even in bondage, the human spirit scribbles its resistance. The debate rages on among experts about the ramp's exact design. Were they straight, spiralling, or internal with evidence from tool marks suggesting multiple methods, each more grueling than the last? Sarcasm whispers again. Oh joy! Innovating ways to break backs for a tomb, no one but grave robbers will appreciate. The shadow fully engulfs you now, cooling the air slightly but amplifying the chill of oppression, as guards herd you up the first incline, the sled protesting with groans that echo your own inner turmoil. Empathy swells for the collapsed elder left behind, his form a distant speck now, a reminder that injustice doesn't discriminate by age, only by utility. As the haul intensifies, muscles quivering on the edge of collapse, you spot hieroglyphs etched on nearby blocks, symbols of eternal life mocking your fleeting existence, and a chill creeps in despite the sun. What if this shadow consumes you entirely, body lost to the monument's hunger? The ramps rise steeper ahead, shadowed figures straining like Sisyphus in eternal loops, their silhouettes dancing grotesquely against the pyramid's flank, leaving you to grapple with the burning question of how much more your spirit can endure before it fractures under the weight of a god-king's dream. Did you know that in the blistering core of ancient Egypt's construction frenzy, workers like you might have hauled stones weighing up to 80 tons, using nothing but ramps slick with water and mud, a feat that modern engineers still puzzle over, replicating it only with machinery that would make the pharaohs weep with envy. Yet here you are, flesh and bone against unyielding rock, wondering if the gods themselves designed this torment to test the limits of human endurance. You feel the sweltering heat envelop you like a smothering shroud as you grip the rope tighter, sweat cascading down your back in relentless streams that mingle with the dust to form a gritty paste, coating your skin in a layer of despair that itches and burns with every flex of your arms. While the chains bite, now mutated into a slick, sweat-lubricated vice from the humidity rising off the ramps, slides painfully against your raw flesh, chafing deeper with the moisture that turns restraint into slippery agony. The Nile's muddy aroma evolves here on the incline, carried stronger on the wind whipping through the structure, blending with the sharp tang of wet limestone and human exertion into a nauseating fog that clings to your nostrils. a sensory struggle that makes each breath feel like inhaling the river's silt directly into your lungs, thick and oppressive under the sun's unyielding glare. As the sled inches up the ramp, wooden rollers groaning beneath the colossal block like the protests of trapped souls. A physical lurch sends the load teetering when a roller splintered from overuse snaps, forcing you and the gang to heave sideways in a desperate brace. Muscles igniting in white-hot fury as ropes bite into shoulders already bruised purple. The strain pulling at your core until it feels like your spine might shatter like fragile papyrus. The cruel sarcasm of it. Sweating rivers to erect a tomb for a man who bathes in luxury downstream. His palace cooled by fans of ostrich feathers, worse than pouring your life into a startup that promises equity, but delivers only burnout and empty promises. Woven into this uphill battle is a factual glimpse from the era's shadows around 2550 BC. During Khufu's reign, these ramps were likely constructed from mud brick and gypsum, angled at a precise 7-10 degrees to allow such hauls, with teams rotating in shifts that blurred day into night, all in service to a belief that the pyramid would ferry the pharaoh's K to the stars. A fascinating tidbit lingers in the haze. Labourers sometimes smeared their ropes with a concoction of beeswax and resin, harvested from acacia trees. Not for ease, but to prevent rot from the constant dousing with Nile water, turning a simple tool into a sticky web that trapped calluses and hope alike. Experts continue to clash over the exact workforce numbers with their 10,000 steady hands or surges up to 40,000 during peak seasons, with tomb inscriptions hinting at organised villages for skilled artisans. Yet skeletal evidence screams of forced labour's toll, leaving the line between volunteer and victim as blurred as heat mirages on the horizon. You spot the boy again, that wide-eyed youth from the dawn march, now straining beside you with ropes dwarfing his frame. But here's the twist: he's not crumbling as expected, but whispering encouragements in a Nubian dialect. Revealing he's no novice, but a survivor of prior campaigns, his small stature hiding a resilience forged in southern raids, turning presumed weakness into an unexpected ally in this shared hell. The heat intensifies as the sun hits its zenith, turning the ramp into a furnace where sweat evaporates almost instantly from exposed stone but pools in your eyes, stinging like venom and blurring the world into a watery nightmare. The chain's mutated bite now exacerbated by salt crystals forming from dried perspiration, crystallizing pain into sharp points that prick with every shift. A shocking wave of despair crashes when a man 2 ropes ahead slips on the slick surface, his body tumbling down the incline in a silent roll that ends with a thud against lower blocks, guards merely glancing before pressing on, his unmoving form a sad testament to how lives flicker out unnoticed, empathy surging through you like a flood for this nameless brother whose dreams died mid-heave, leaving families to wonder forever. Clever commentary echoes in your mind, building eternity one casualty at a time, much like those viral challenges today where influencers risk it all for views. But here the likes come from indifferent deities, zooming out in a momentary poetic drift. The pyramid ascends like a jagged tooth biting into the azure sky, its tiers a staircase of human sacrifice where sweat rivers carve invisible canyons down the flanks. The vast desert beyond a golden shroud, whispering of freedoms forever deferred. You redouble your efforts as Amenhotep bellows from below, his voice cutting through the din like a chisel on granite, urging faster pulls lest the pharaoh's scribes dock the gang's rations. The overseer's earlier sympathy now vanished in the heat's forge, twisted into barked threats that reveal his own chains, those of fear from above. The sled stabilizes, but the sensory assault mounts as sweat mingles with blood from rope burns, creating rivulets that trace maps of suffering down your arms. The Nile's evolved scent now laced with the metallic bite of fear sweat from the group, a collective odor of desperation that hangs heavy in the stagnant air pockets between blocks. Suddenly, a guard douses the ramp ahead with more water from leather buckets, the splash cooling momentarily but turning the path into a treacherous slide. Your feet skidding as you pull, chains clanking louder in the chaos, the bite mutating once more into a cold, wet clamp that numbs while it wounds. Sarcasm bubbles up amid the strain. Oh, how thoughtful, a slip and slide to the afterlife, because nothing spices up drudgery like the thrill of accidental demise akin to those office team-building exercises that end in ER visits and awkward apologies. The boy's hand brushes yours in the heave, A brief touch of solidarity that sparks a flicker of hope amid the despair. His whispered tale of a hidden spring nearby, a small rebellion against the thirst that gnaws at everyone. Another tidbit surfaces through the fog. Ancient healers prescribed a brew of sycamore figs and honey for heat exhaustion, doled out sparingly to key workers, as if sweetness could mask the bitterness of bondage. The scholarly debate rages on about the water channels. Did they use counterweight systems, with sand-filled sleds descending to aid the ascent? Or was it pure brute force, with models in museums failing to capture the human cost that calculations overlook? Your modern lens sharpens the irony. It's like crowdfunding a billionaire's yacht, where backers get nothing but sore muscles and stories to tell, if they survive. Zooming out again, the structure looms ever larger, its shadow now a fleeting respite that dances across the ramp like elusive mercy, the Nile glinting far off as a mocking lifeline in the sea of sand, where waves of heat shimmer like illusions of escape. As the block nears the next tier, guards signal a pause to secure it, but the heat doesn't relent, sweat continuing to pour as if your body weeps for the injustice. The chain's persistent torment a rhythm that pulses with your heartbeat. Now erratic from dehydration's grip, empathy deepens for the fallen man below, his body carted away like debris. A shocking reminder that despair isn't just emotional, but a thief of vitality, stealing breaths one heave at a time. The group resumes, muscles quivering on collapse's edge, the ramp steepening into a wall of will-breaking incline, and as you lean into the rope, a chill creeps despite the swelter. What if this endless heaving breaks not just your body, but the fragile thread of humanity that binds you to the boy and the others? The stones above stack like silent judges, their edges casting jagged patterns in the sweat-pooled reflections on the ramp. Patterns that swirl hypnotically, drawing your gaze upward to where the pyramid's apex pierces the heavens, a pinnacle of despair that beckons yet repels, leaving you to wonder if the summit holds release, or merely more mingling of sweat and shattered dreams. What if the crack of a whip wasn't just a sound, but a symphony of control, with ancient overseers wielding braided leather cords tipped with bronze that could split skin from 10 feet away, turning discipline into an art form that left scars deeper than the Nile's canyons, and historians estimate thousands bore these marks, their bones unearthed today showing healed fractures from motivational lashes that make you question if the pyramids were built on stone or suffering. You feel the whip's thunderous crack explode in the air like a storm god's fury, the leather slicing through the humid haze with a whistle that raises every hair on your sweat-drenched arms, pain etching into your skin before it even lands as anticipation coils your muscles into knots. The chain's bite now mutated into a blistering throb from the ramp's friction, swollen and weeping under the relentless pull that turns iron into a living tormentor gnawing at your mobility. The Nile's muddy aroma shifts here on the higher tiers, carried upward on gusts laced with the metallic scent of blood from fresh wounds, evolving into a coppery fog that invades your mouth and throat, a sensory struggle that makes swallowing feel like gulping down rusted nails, each breath tainted by the collective anguish hanging thick amid the stone dust swirling like vengeful spirits. As the gang strains to position the block on its ledge, a physical catastrophe unfolds when the sled skids on a patch of loose gravel, tipping dangerously and yanking the ropes taut, your shoulder popping with a sickening grind as you brace against the shift, agony shooting down your arm like lightning forking through clouds, forcing a guttural gasp that draws the overseer's ire. Oh, the twisted irony of it! Etching eternal glory for a pharaoh who never lifted a finger, his name carved in gold while yours fades into the sand worse than grinding through endless emails, for a CEO who vacations on yachts bought with your overtime. At least they sent holiday cards instead of lashes. Embedded in this chaotic heave is a factual sliver from the Old Kingdom's brutal ledger around 2500 BC. Whips weren't mere tools but symbols of Maat, the cosmic order, where overseers enforced the pharaoh's divine will with strikes calibrated to injure without fully disabling, preserving labor for the god's grand designs that align these tombs with Orion's belt. A fascinating tidbit whispers through the pain fog some whips were woven with hippopotamus hide, prized for its durability and the strange belief that it channeled the beast's ferocity to subdue chaos, as if animal skin could tame the human storm brewing in chained hearts. Academics still wrangle over the extent of corporal punishment, Were the lashes routine or reserved for laggards, with some papyri touting benevolent management, while mass graves tell tales of systemic abuse? Leaving the truth as elusive as shade on this sun-blasted plateau, you glimpse Amenhotep once more, that conflicted overseer from the quarry depths. But with a jarring twist, he's not cracking the whip himself, but handing it off to a subordinate, his face paling as if the tool burns his palm, revealing a rumour among the whispers he lost a brother to these very ramps years ago, turning his authority into a haunted mask that cracks under the weight of enforced cruelty. The whip lands on a worker beside you, the crack echoing like thunder rolling across the desert, his back arching in silent scream as red lines bloom through his ragged tunic. A shocking display of pain that sends a ripple of fear through the line. Empathy flooding you for this man whose only crime was a momentary falter, his eyes meeting yours in a brief, sad plea that etches deeper than any scar. Light sarcasm curls in your mind like a defensive shield, splendid motivation technique, because nothing boosts productivity like the promise of personalized artwork on your flesh, much like those performance reviews where feedback stings, but at least doesn't draw blood. Zooming out in a hushed poetic interlude, the pyramid's flank rises like a colossal wave frozen in stone, its surface a mosaic of sweat-streaked blocks where shadows play tricks of movement, the vast Nile below a serpentine vein pulsing life into the barren expanse. Indifferent to the thunderous echoes of human thunder, you resume the pull as orders bark forth, the chain's mutated bite now inflamed by sweat's salty intrusion, pulsing with every heave like a heartbeat of resentment, while the evolving Nile scent mingles with the acrid burn of charred wood from nearby signal fires, a sensory motif that crawls into your sinuses and ignites headaches like slow-burning embers. Suddenly, the boy, that resilient Nubian from the lower ramp, slips under the strain, his rope slackening just enough to draw attention, and in a heart-wrenching dramatization, the whip descends toward him, but you lunge instinctively, taking the lash across your forearm in a searing line that feels like fire etching runes of sacrifice. Pain exploding in waves that blur your vision and weaken your knees. Clever commentary drifts through the haze are the perks of solidarity and slavery, where protecting the young earns you bonus stripes, akin to jumping on a grenade in a boardroom battle for a colleague's promotion. The gang stabilizes the block amid the chaos, guards shoving it into place with poles that thud like distant drums. But the sensory assault persists as blood trickles from your new wound, warm and sticky against the chain's iron, mutating the bite into a slick, throbbing union of old and fresh torment. Another tidbit emerges amid the thunderous aftermath overseers sometimes dipped whip tips in natron to prevent infection, a bizarre mercy rooted in the same salt used for mummification, as if preparing the living for death's embrace one strike at a time. The debate among scholars simmers on about resistance. Did subtle sabotages like accidental slips occur? Or was fear too absolute, with toolware patterns suggesting deliberate slowdowns that history buries under official narratives? Your modern parallel sharpens the sting. It's like enduring a toxic workplace where HR ignores complaints. But here the exit interview involves a shallow grave instead of a severance package. Zooming out once again, the tiered structure towers overhead like a stepped ladder to the divine. Each level a chapter of etched pain where whip's echoes fade into the wind. The desert's golden hues bleeding into crimson as the sun dips, painting the scene in hues of sacrificial fire. Amenhotep approaches, his eyes avoiding yours as he mutters a curt command to bind the wound with a strip of linen. His twist deepening, he slips you an extra sip from his own water skin, a fleeting act of atonement that humanizes the monster, stirring conflicted empathy amid the thunder of resuming work. The pain in your arm throbs in rhythm with the chain's persistent gnaw, now a duet of agony that makes every movement a negotiation with collapse, while the Nile's evolved aroma wafts stronger with evening's breeze, carrying hints of cooling mud that mock your parched lips, as lashes crack sporadically around you, enforcing the endless cycle. A psychological chill settles deeper than any wound. How many more thunders must you weather before the storm of this existence breaks you utterly? The whip's shadows lengthen across the stones like elongated fingers grasping for souls, their tips glinting in the fading light as if alive with malice, leaving you to ponder if the real etching isn't on skin but on the spirit, carving hollows where hope once resided. Imagine if the very bread that sustained you through endless toil was baked from grain, infested with sand and rat droppings, with archaeologists uncovering bakeries near Giza that churned out loaves by the thousands daily. Yet skeletal remains reveal chronic malnutrition and dental wear from gritty meals that ground teeth to nubs faster than the Nile erodes its banks. You feel the hollow gnaw of hunger twisting in your gut like a coiling serpent, deeper than any fear the whips could instill, as the evening shadows stretch across the ramps and your body, weakened from the day's heaves, slumps against a half-placed block. The chain's bite now mutated into a dull, festering ache swollen from hours of neglect, pulsing faintly like a forgotten bruise under the cooling air, while the Nile's filthy aroma wafts stronger now, evolving into a stagnant brew of rotting vegetation and human waste dumped upstream, infiltrating the meager rations distributed at dusk and turning every swallow into a gamble with sickness. The sensory struggle intensifies as your stomach cramps violently, empty save for the morning's stale crust that sits like lead, acids rising to burn your throat with a sour tang that mingles with the metallic aftertaste of blood from chewed lips. Each pang a reminder that survival here dances on the edge of starvation's blade. As the gang gathers for the evening allotment, a physical tumult erupts when a guard overturns a basket of onions meant for the group, scattering them into the mud where feet trample them into pulp, forcing you to scramble on hands and knees amid the filth, grabbing what you can before rats claim the rest. Your fingers sinking into the slimy earth that reeks of the Nile's overflow, hunger driving you to devour a soiled bulb raw, its sharp juices stinging cuts on your tongue like accusations of your lowly state. Oh, the mocking irony of it. Starving amidst the fertile Nile's bounty while the pharaoh feasts on roasted quail and honeyed dates in distant palaces, worse than surviving on ramen during a broke college semester. At least then you choose your poverty instead of having it chained to your ankles. Folded into this desperate scramble is a factual whisper from the 4th Dynasty's harsh routine around 2580 BC. Work crews received daily rations of bread baked in vast on-site ovens, beer brewed from barley to stave off dehydration, and occasional meat from cattle slaughtered nearby, all orchestrated by scribes who tallied portions to fuel the pyramid's rise without wasting the pharaoh's resources. A fascinating tidbit surfaces through the hunger fog. These builders sometimes consumed vast quantities of radishes and garlic, not just for flavour, but because the Egyptians believed they purified the body and warded off the evil spirits thought to cause illness in the crowded camps. As if pungent roots could exorcise the demons of dysentery and despair lurking in every tainted sip. Historians still fiercely debate whether folks like you were outright slaves captured in border skirmishes or merely conscripted peasants paid in these sparse goods, with tomb evidence showing honourable burials for some workers clashing against tales from Herodotus of vast enslaved hordes, leaving the truth buried under layers of myth and mud like forgotten artefacts. You spot the boy again, that tough Nubian from the ramps who took your lash earlier, but with a haunting twist, he's not sharing his scavenged onion as before, but hoarding it fiercely, eyes hollowed by a hunger that reveals he's been shortchanged for days by corrupt guards skimming rations, turning your budding alliance into a wary standoff where trust erodes faster than the Nile's banks during flood season. The filth of the river clings to everything now, the aroma mutating into a pervasive rot that seeps into the bread loaves handed out next, their surfaces dusted with silt from floodwaters used in mixing, a sensory motif that crawls down your throat with each forced bite, gritty particles grinding against your teeth like invisible millstones wearing enamel to dust. A shocking sadness envelops you when an older woman in the line collapses clutching her empty bowl, her frail body convulsing from what whispers call the river's curse, a bout of fever from contaminated water. Her gasps a light dramatization of how hunger weakens the strong, leaving her to be dragged away to the sick tents where recovery is as rare as mercy, empathy surging through your veins like a bitter tonic for this stranger whose fate mirrors the slow starvation claiming the camp one by one. Sarcasm whispers in your parched mind the gourmet delights of pyramid cuisine, where every meal comes with a side of injustice and a dash of dysentery, much like those fad diets today that promise vitality but deliver only hollow cheeks and regret, zooming out in a quiet, poetic pause. The workers' camp sprawls like a chaotic hive at the pyramid's base, torches flickering like dying stars against the twilight, the Nile's dark ribbon snaking through the valley as a lifeline tainted by the very filth it breeds. Indifferent to the gnawing voids in human bellies below, you choke down the bread, its dough heavy with emmer wheat and hidden stones that crack against your molars. The chains ache flaring as you shift to sit. Now a subdued throb echoing the hunger's persistent claw. Suddenly, Amenhotep appears at the ration line's edge, the overseer whose hidden sympathies have flickered before, but twisted anew. He's not enforcing portions but slipping extra beer to select workers. His face etched with guilt as rumours swirl, he's funneling scraps to a secret family hidden in the village, humanizing his role yet deepening the divide where favoritism starves the rest. The Nile's filthy essence invades the beer too, its fermented barley tasting of muddy undertones that bloat your stomach without satisfying, a sensory struggle that bloats and nauseates in equal measure. The aroma now laced with the sour yeast of overripe batches left too long in the heat. Clever commentary drifts through your weakening thoughts because nothing quenches thirst like a brew that's half river slime, akin to chugging energy drinks laced with regret in a modern marathon of overtime. The group disperses to huddled fires, but hunger gnaws unrelentingly, driving you to either boy's untouched onion with a primal urge, the boy's defensive glare a sad barrier born of survival's harsh lessons. Another tidbit emerges amid the dimming light. Excavations reveal these camps included bakeries capable of producing 30,000 loaves a day, fueled by grain shipments floated down the Nile. Yet bone analyses show diets rich in carbs but deficient in proteins for many, painting a picture of sustenance that sustained bodies just enough to toil another dawn. The scholarly wrangle continues over the camp's nature. Were they vibrant communities of skilled artisans with families nearby, as graffiti boasts, or grim barracks for coerced labour, with tool marks and trash heaps suggesting a mix that defies simple labels? Your modern lens highlights the parallel. It's like living off gig economy gigs, where payments and perks barely cover the grind. But here the app is a whip and the rating system measures lashes endured. Zooming out once more, the pyramid looms as a silent sentinel under the emerging stars, its form a geometric ghost rising from the filth-strewn plain, where the Nile's whispers carry echoes of abundance mocked by the empty bowls scattered like discarded prayers. As night deepens, you curl around your gnawing core, the chain's muted bite a companion to the hunger that whispers of rebellion in your dreams. The boy's silhouette nearby a reminder of fragile bonds frayed by need. Empathy lingers for the fallen woman, her absence a void in the line that could soon be yours. The shocking reality that filth and famine claim more than accidents ever do. The fire's embers glow faintly, casting shadows that dance like spectres of fuller meals long past. And as sleep tugs at your edges, a psychological chill settles. What if this gnawing isn't just in your belly but in your soul? Eroding the will to endure another day amid the river's deceptive plenty, the Nile's waters lap distantly, their surface rippling with unseen currents that mirror the hidden depths of despair, leaving a mood of uneasy anticipation for the fears that hunger amplifies in the dark. Did you ever consider that under the moon's indifferent gaze, ancient Egyptian labourers toiled through nights illuminated only by flickering reed torches soaked in animal fat, their flames sputtering against the cold that seeped into bones already fractured from daytime burdens, with excavations revealing vertebrae fused from repetitive stress that turned men into hunched shadows before their time, begging the question of whether the pyramids were less eternal wonders and more graveyards for the living. You feel the moon's cold gaze piercing through the thin veil of your tattered linen wrap, chilling your sweat-dampened skin until gooseflesh rises like tiny protests against the night's sudden drop, bones aching deep within as if the endless toil has hollowed them out, leaving brittle echoes that throb with every subtle shift on the hard-packed earth of the camp floor. While the chain's bite mutates into a frozen clamp, the iron contracting in the cool air to pinch tighter around your ankles, drawing a sharp wince that blends with the distant howls of jackals scavenging the plateau's edges. The Nile's filthy aroma lingers even in the dark, evolving into a clammy mist that rises from the river's banks, carrying whispers of decay and dampness that settle into your joints like insidious frost, a sensory struggle that makes every breath feel weighted with the river's chill secrets, turning rest into a battlefield where exhaustion wars with discomfort. As the camp quiets under the starry canopy, A physical collapse overtakes you when your knees buckle unexpectedly while rising for a midnight water ration, your body folding like a reed in the wind, slamming into the ground with a thud that jars your spine and sends shockwaves through aching bones, the impact awakening old bruises that scream in unison, forcing you to curl fetal amid the filth, gasping as stars swirl in your vision like mocking constellations aligned for the Pharaoh's glory. Ah, the sardonic twist of it all, collapsing under the weight of building immortality while your own frame crumbles like cheap pottery, worse than pulling an all-nighter for a deadline that only enriches the boss. At least in today's world you get energy drinks and ergonomic chairs instead of moonlit misery. Woven into this nocturnal agony is a factual thread from the Old Kingdom's shadowed hours around 2560 BC. Night shifts were common during full moons to maximize progress on the pyramid, with workers leveraging the cooler temperatures to haul stones without the sun's scorch, all under the pharaoh's decree that the structure must rise swiftly to secure his journey to the Duat, the underworld realm where gods judge the soul's worth. A fascinating tidbit drifts through your pain-hazed mind. These labourers sometimes fashioned crude splints from palm fronds and mud to brace aching limbs, drawing from the same materials used in boat building along the Nile, as if river crafts could mend the human vessels breaking on land's unforgiving shores. Scholars still spar over the nightwork's prevalence. Did lunar cycles dictate schedules as some lunar-aligned tomb paintings suggest? Or was it sporadic desperation, with tool deposits in camps hinting at extended hours that blur the line between devotion and desperation in the historical record? You sense the boy nearby, that resilient Nubian whose hoarded rations strained your bond earlier. But with a surprising pivot, he's not retreating into solitude, but creeping closer in the dark, his small hands pressing a stolen fig against your palm, revealing he's bartered with a guard for extras, turning survival's edge into a tentative bridge of kinship that warms against the moon's chill. The chain's frozen bite intensifies as you attempt to sit, metal grinding against bone with a grating chill that mutates further into a numb throb, echoing the deeper ache radiating from your spine, while the Nile's misty essence crawls across the ground like spectral fingers, dampening your wrap and amplifying the cold that seeps into every pore, a sensory motif that whispers of the river's dual nature, life-giver by day, harbinger of nocturnal dread by night. A shocking despair unfolds when a fellow worker's silhouette staggers past, collapsing mere feet away with a rattle of chains, his breath shallow and laboured from what the whispers call the builder's curse, a sad dramatization of lungs clogged with stone dust inhaled over years, his form convulsing faintly before stilling, empathy welling up in you like a cold spring for this man whose endless toil ended not in glory, but in anonymous silence under the stars. Light sarcasm curls in your thoughts like smoke from dying embers. The luxurious retirement plan of pyramid service, where your pension is a plot in the workers' necropolis, far grander than cashing out a 401k, only to find it's invested in regrets. Zooming out in a serene poetic breath, the camp lies scattered like forgotten offerings under the moon's silver veil, the pyramid's silhouette a brooding giant against the constellations, where Orion's belt mocks the alignments etched in stone below, the Nile's dark flow a silent witness to the aching bones littering its banks. You accept the fig from the boy, its sticky sweetness a brief balm against the gnawing void, but as you chew, the chain shifts, reigniting the frozen pinch that travels up your legs, merging with the bone-deep ache that feels like the weight of every hauled block compressed into your frame. Suddenly, Amunhotep emerges from the shadows, the overseer whose hidden mercies have flickered before, but twisted anew. He's not here to punish the fallen, but to haul the collapsed worker away himself, his face etched with moonlight-revealed sorrow, murmuring a quiet prayer to Osiris as if atoning for the system's sins, his role now a reluctant ferryman in this land of the almost dead. The Nile's mist thickens, carrying a chill that bites at exposed skin, evolving the aroma into something almost ethereal yet cloying, a sensory struggle that fogs your breath and blurs the line between wakefulness and weary hallucination. Clever commentary echoes faintly, because nothing caps a day of drudgery like a midnight collapse party, where the guest of honour is exhaustion itself, akin to those viral burnout stories on social media, where likes pour in but relief remains elusive. The boy's presence lingers, his whispered tales of Nubian nights under warmer moons a small spark against the cold, but the ache in your bones deepens, radiating outward like cracks in parched earth. The chain's mutated numbness now a creeping paralysis that hints at permanent damage. Another tidbit surfaces amid the quiet ancient medical papyri describe treatments for aching bones using willow bark infusions, precursors to aspirin administered sparingly to valued workers, as if nature's remedies could patch the fractures wrought by divine ambition. The academic tussle persists on worker longevity. Did the toil truly shorten lives to averages of 35, as isotope analyses of teeth suggest from poor diets and stress? Or were there outliers who thrived, with elite overseer tombs boasting longer spans that skew the narrative of universal suffering? Your modern parallel sharpens the night's edge. It's like marathoning a streaming binge only to wake with a crick in your neck. But here, the show is survival, and the subscription fee is your skeleton's integrity. Zooming out once more, the moon bathes the plateau in ethereal light, casting long shadows from the pyramid's ramps like elongated fingers, reaching for the camp's huddled forms, the stars wheeling overhead in patterns that ancient priests read as omens, indifferent to the mortal aches unfolding below. As you force yourself upright, bones protesting with creaks that echo in the stillness, the boy's hand steadies you, forging a fragile alliance against the endless, and the chain's chill bite subsides slightly in the shared warmth. But the deeper throb persists, a harbinger of toils yet to come. Empathy for the dragged-away worker lingers like the mist, his absence a void that chills the air further, the shocking realization that endless labor doesn't build strength but erodes it layer by layer, leaving husks where men once stood. The camp's fires dwindle to glowing coals, their smoke curling upward like souls escaping earthly chains, and as the moon climbs higher, a psychological chill envelops you. What if this aching isn't fleeting but the pyramid's true legacy, inscribed not in stone but in the very marrow of your being, whispering of collapses yet to come? The jackal's cries fade into the distance, their eyes glinting like scattered jewels in the dark, reflecting the cold gaze that watches over a world where toil never truly sleeps, shifting the mood toward a restless vigilance against the dawn's impending demands. What if the bonds forged in shared suffering could shatter like fragile faience beads under the strain of survival, with ancient camp records hinting at betrayals among workers that led to secret executions, where one whispered accusation could doom a comrade to the Nile's crocodiles, raising the eerie question of whether isolation in crowds was the pyramid's cruelest curse, outstripping even the whip's bite. You feel the isolation cutting sharper than any quarry stone as dawn's first light filters through the camp's reed huts, a chill lingering from the moon's cold gaze now mutating into a clammy dread that seeps into your pores like the Nile's misty breath. Bones still aching from last night's collapse but now compounded by a hollow emptiness in your chest. The chain's bite evolving into a ghostly numbness that tingles with phantom pains, as if the iron has absorbed the night's betrayals and reflects them back in subtle twitches. The Nile's filthy aroma rises anew with the morning fog, carrying a sharper edge of betrayal, hints of smoke from hidden fires where secret dealings unfold, a sensory struggle that makes the air feel thick and conspiratorial, each inhale laced with the paranoia of unseen eyes watching your every falter, turning the camp into a labyrinth of distrust where allies morph into shadows. As you rise unsteadily to join the waterline, a physical betrayal strikes when the boy, that Nubian youth whose fig offered fleeting warmth last night, suddenly shoves past you, snatching the last full ladle from the trough and spilling half in his haste, his eyes avoiding yours with a guilty flicker that reveals he's traded loyalty for favor with a guard, leaving you with a mere dribble that barely wets your cracked lips, the shock sending a jolt through your aching frame as if isolation has manifested as tangible push, deepening the gnaw of hunger into something more visceral, a wound of the spirit that festers unchecked. Oh, the biting sarcasm of it, betrayed by fellow sufferers in this pyramid of misery, where unity crumbles faster than the mud brick ramps under rain, worse than navigating office politics, where a colleague steals your idea for a promotion. At least there you get a coffee machine and HR to mediate instead of silent accusations that seal fates. Folded into this dawn rift is a factual echo from the era's underbelly during Khufu's relentless build around 2580 BC. Worker camps housed diverse groups from conquered territories, fostering tensions that scribes noted in tallies of disruptions, where Nubians, Libyans, and Egyptians vied for scarce resources under the pharaoh's hierarchical gaze, turning shared labour into a breeding ground for divisions that served the overseer's control. A fascinating tidbit lingers in the fog. Some workers carved tiny amulets from leftover limestone scraps, shaped like scarab beetles, not for protection, but to secretly mark debts or alliances, as if insects could safeguard against the human vermin of treachery infesting the ranks. Historians still grapple with whether these betrayals were rampant or exaggerated in later Greek accounts like Herodotus, who painted vivid pictures of enslaved hordes turning on each other. Yet Egyptian papyri suggest more nuanced rivalries fueled by ethnic divides, leaving the extent of internal strife as murky as the Nile's silted depths. You spot Amunhotep patrolling the line's edge, the overseer whose midnight mercy last night now takes a sinister twist. He's not just overseeing, but interrogating the boy in hushed tones, rewarding the lad with an extra bread hunk for information on slackers, revealing the youth's shove was no accident but a calculated move to curry favour, turning your fragile bond into shards that pierce deeper than any whip scar. Isolation wrapping around you like an invisible shroud. The chain's mutated numbness spreads upward, sinking with the isolation's cut that feels like invisible blades scoring your skin, while the Nile's aroma sharpens into an acrid tang of burning incense from a distant ritual fire, a sensory motif that crawls into your nostrils and evokes the gods' indifferent oversight, mocking the human fractures below. A shocking sadness unfolds when you overhear whispers of another betrayal, a woman from your gang accused falsely by her tent mate of hoarding tools, dragged away at dawn to face the crocodiles in the river's bend, her cries fading into the mist as guards execute the pharaoh's justice without trial. Empathy surging through you like a cold current for this innocent whose trust in kin led to her end, lightly dramatizing how isolation amplifies every loss into a personal abyss. Clever commentary whispers in your isolated mind's splendid community spirit, where snitching earns you crumbs while loyalty gets you fed to the beasts, much like those reality TV shows where alliances flip for votes. But here the prize is mere survival, and the drama ends in real silence. Zooming out in a fleeting poetic hush, the camp awakens like a fractured mosaic under the rising sun, huts clustered like wary animals around the pyramid's looming form, the Nile's fog veiling the horizon in layers of secrecy, where betrayals dissolve into the ether, indifferent to the isolated hearts beating below. You shuffle to the tool shed alone now, the boy's absence a gaping void that echoes in every step, the chain dragging heavier as if weighted by unspoken accusations. Its bite now a prickling reminder mutated by the morning's dew that slicks the iron and irritates raw spots anew. Suddenly, a guard eyes you suspiciously, influenced by the circulating whispers, and assigns you to a solitary task chiseling markers on blocks, isolating you further from the gang where murmurs could defend or damn, the hammer's repetitive thud syncing with your heartbeat in a lonely rhythm that amplifies the cut of betrayal. Sarcasm bubbles up as a lone defense. Oh, the joys of solo work in this team effort, because nothing builds camaraderie like being ostracized for sins you didn't commit, akin to being ghosted in a group chat after one misinterpreted emoji. The Nile's evolving scent wafts stronger with the breeze, now mingled with the chalky dust of your chiseling, a sensory struggle that powders your face and eyes, blurring the world into a haze where figures seem like apparitions plotting in the mist. Another tidbit emerges amid the isolation. Ancient overseers encouraged rivalries by pitting ethnic groups against each other in quota contests, offering minor privileges like better sleeping spots, as if competition could mask the shared chains binding all. The debate rages among experts about unity's possibility. Did occasional strikes or escapes occur as papyri vaguely hint, or was division too entrenched, with artifact distribution suggesting segregated camps that fueled perpetual suspicion? Your modern lens casts the scene in stark relief. It's like enduring a toxic social media echo chamber, where friends turn foes over likes. But here, the algorithm is survival's harsh code, deleting connections without warning. Zooming out once more, the plateau stretches like a vast canvas of fractured loyalties, the pyramid's shadow creeping eastward as a dark tide swallowing the camp's divisions. The distant Nile murmuring ancient feuds that echo through time, untouched by the solitary chisels scarring stone and soul alike. As midday heat dispels the fog, you chisel on in silence, the isolation cutting deeper with every strike. The boys' distant laughter with the guards a dagger twist that sows seeds of resentment. Empathy fading into self-preservation's cold armor. The chain's prickling evolves into a steady itch, as if infested with the camp's invisible tensions, and whispers reach you of more accusations brewing, heightening the paranoia that wraps your thoughts in thorns. A psychological chill settles despite the sun. What if this isolation isn't temporary but the pyramid's ultimate design, carving divides wider than any ramp, leaving you adrift in a sea of sufferers who see enemies in mirrors? The chisels around you ring out in discordant symphony, their sparks flying like fleeting trusts extinguished in the air, shifting the mood toward a simmering wariness that promises no safe harbor in the nights to come. Have you ever imagined scaling a ramp steeper than a modern skyscraper's fire escape, slick with the blood and sweat of those who fell before, where ancient engineers calculated angles so precise that a single misstep could send tons of stone cascading like an avalanche of divine wrath, prompting the chilling question of how many unmarked graves lie hidden beneath the pyramid's flawless geometry? Their occupants silenced mid-climb, you feel the ramp's treacherous climb gripping your every breath as your bare feet slip on the mud-slicked incline. The surface a treacherous slurry of Nile water and crushed limestone that squelches between your toes like cold, grasping mud from a nightmare bog, sending terror surging through your veins like icy venom while the chain's bite mutates into a slippery noose, lubricated by the ramp's dampness to chafe unpredictably, twisting with each desperate scramble that threatens to yank you backward into the void below. The Nile's filthy aroma ascends with you now, evolving into a humid vapor that hangs heavy in the narrowing air, laced with the sharp ozone of impending storm clouds gathering overhead. A sensory struggle that clogs your lungs and makes each gasp feel like inhaling the river's submerged secrets. Thick with the dread of heights, where one wrong breath could unbalance your teetering world. As your gang hauls yet another massive block up this endless spiral ramp, a physical disaster looms when the wooden rollers beneath the sled splinter under the strain. The entire load lurching sideways with a groan that vibrates through your ropes, forcing you to dig your heels into the slick mud and pull with every ounce of remaining strength, your arms burning as if threaded with fire while terror clamps your chest tighter than any overseer's grasp, the block teetering on the edge of tumbling and taking half the team with it into the abyss. Oh, the dark irony of it. Climbing toward the heavens to build a pharaoh's ladder to the gods while your own ascent feels like a descent into Hades, worse than hiking a treacherous trail in today's adventure tourism, where at least you get harnesses and selfies instead of the constant whisper of gravity's fatal embrace. Folded into this vertigo-inducing toil is a factual glimpse from the pyramid's vertiginous history during the height of construction around 2050 BC. These ramps coiled around the structure like serpents, built from compacted rubble and timber to reach elevations over 480 feet, allowing teams to position casing stones with astronomical precision that align the apex with true north, all in ritual homage to the pharaoh's solar divinity. A fascinating tidbit creeps into your terror-fogged thoughts. Workers sometimes smeared the ramps with a paste of taffla clay mixed with cattle dung, not for traction, but to reduce friction for sleds, turning animal waste into an unlikely lubricant that spared ropes but turned the path into a sliding trap for human feet. As if the gods demanded offerings of balance alongside stone, experts continue to quarrel over the ramp's configuration. Were they single, straight ascents that required dismantling and rebuilding at each level, or encircling spirals that allowed continuous work, with scale models in labs failing to resolve how such feats avoided catastrophic collapses that ancient texts vaguely allude to? You catch a glimpse of the boy higher up the ramp, that Nubian lad whose betrayal stung like salt in wounds yesterday. But with an unforeseen reversal, he's not reveling in his guarded favours, but extending a steadying hand to a faltering elder, his face etched with regret as whispers reveal he's been coerced by threats against his hidden kin back south, transforming his isolation-fueling actions into a reluctant shield that now seeks redemption in small acts of aid. Bridging the cut of distrust with tentative threads, the chain's slippery mutation intensifies as rain begins to spit from the clouds, turning the iron into a cold, greased snare that slides and bites erratically, sinking with the terror gripping your breath in shallow bursts. while the Nile's vaporous essence mutates further into a drizzling mist that soaks your tunic and weighs it down like sodden guilt, a sensory motif that blurs your vision and amplifies the vertigo swirling in your gut. A shocking chill descends when a scream pierces the air from above, a worker losing his footing on the slick curve and plummeting past you in a blur of flailing limbs, his body impacting the lower tiers with a distant thud that echoes like a muffled drum, lightly dramatizing the sad finality of a life extinguished mid-climb. Empathy flooding you for this unknown soul whose terror-filled eyes locked with yours in that eternal instant, leaving a void in the line that the guards fill without pause. Sarcasm slithers through your panicked mind like a lifeline, marvelous safety protocols, where the only net is the ground below, because nothing encourages careful steps like the promise of becoming part of the Foundation, much like those extreme sports videos going viral today, where thrill-seekers court death for views. But here the audience is just in different stars. Zooming out in a breathless poetic interlude, the ramp spirals upward like a coiled asp ready to strike, its slick surface a ribbon of peril winding around the pyramid's flanks, where distant thunder rumbles as if the gods debate your fate, the vast plateau below shrinking to a patchwork of toil and tombs under the gathering storm's grey pall. You press on, the sled stabilizing through sheer collective will. But the terror doesn't ebb as the incline steepens, your breaths coming in ragged hitches that fog the misty air, the chain's erratic chafing now a frantic pulse that mirrors your heartbeat's wild tattoo. Suddenly, Amunatep shouts from a ledge below, the overseer whose mercies have twisted before, but now with a desperate edge he's not barking orders but warning of a loose roller ahead, his voice cracking with uncharacteristic fear. As revelation spread, he's climbed these ramps in his youth and lost a limb to a similar slip, his wooden prosthetic hidden under robes a secret twist that humanizes his commands into echoes of survived terror. The Nile's drizzling mist evolves into a steady patter, carrying the earthy scent of wetted dust that stings your eyes and slicks every handhold, a sensory struggle that turns the climb into a grotesque ballet of slips and recoveries, where terror grips not just your breath but your very soul, whispering of the fragility dangling over the drop. Clever commentary flickers amid the dread-er, the adrenaline rush of ancient extreme sports, sand sponsorships or safety gear, akin to free climbing a waterfall with weights tied to your feet, where victory means merely surviving to slip another day. The group crests a particularly treacherous bend, guards prodding with poles that jab like accusations, but the mist thickens, obscuring the path ahead and heightening the isolation that cuts anew. The boy's redemptive gesture a distant blur now swallowed by the haze. Another tidbit surfaces through the fog. Ancient climbers sometimes tied ropes around waists and crude harnesses fashioned from papyrus cords, more symbolic than secure, as if plant fibers could defy the pull of earth against divine ambition. The scholarly debate swirls on about collapse frequencies. Did ramps fail often, as implied by scattered debris fields, or rarely, with engineering prowess minimizing risks? Yet worker skeletons with spiral fractures suggest otherwise, painting a picture of terror etched into bones. Your modern parallel heightens the vertigo. It's like navigating a crowded escalator during a blackout, but here the power outage is permanent, and the stakes are your splintered remains below. Zooming out once more, the pyramid emerges through breaks in the mist like a spectral giant, its ramps a labyrinthine vein pulsing with human fear, the Nile far below a silver thread mocking the heights with its grounded flow, thunderheads brooding overhead as harbingers of chaos yet to unfold. As rain intensifies, slicking the ramp into a near-vertical slide, you claw forward, terror squeezing your breaths into whispers, the boy's hand reaching back once more in silent apology, forging a wary reconnection amid the peril. Empathy lingers for the fallen climber, his absence a ghostly gap that chills the line. The shocking truth that treacherous ascents claim spirits as readily as bodies, leaving survivors to haul not just stones but the weight of lost comrades. The chain's slippery torment mutates into a drenched clamp, cold water trickling down its links to numb your skin further, and as lightning flashes, illuminating the drop's yawning maw, a psychological chill burrows deep. What if this climb isn't toward completion but an eternal loop, where terror grips eternally, binding you to the ramp's merciless embrace? The storm's first true bolt cracks nearby, casting the ramp in stark relief. Shadows leaping like panicked souls, fleeing the incline, shifting the mood toward a frantic urgency that promises no respite from the height's hungry void. What if the pyramid's true foundation wasn't limestone, but the crushed remains of those who built them? With geologists estimating that sudden rock slides during construction could bury dozens in an instant, their bodies entombed forever in the very structure they raised, leaving us to wonder how many silent screams echo within those ancient walls. Unheeded by the pharaohs who slept soundly in their palaces, you feel the avalanche of rock thundering down the ramp like the god's own fury unleashed, the ground vibrating under your feet with a bone-rattling roar that sends pebbles skittering like frightened scarabs across the slick surface. Panic surging through your veins, hot and electric, turning your blood to liquid fire while the chain's bite mutates into a frantic snag, yanking you sideways as the links catch on tumbling debris, twisting your ankle in a sharp burst of agony that merges with the chaos swirling around you. The Nile's filthy aroma blasts upward in the tumult, evolving into a choking cloud of wet dust and pulverized stone that invades your mouth and eyes like gritty phantoms. A sensory struggle that blinds you momentarily and fills your lungs with the river's dredged-up silt, each cough expelling particles that scrape your throat raw, as if the avalanche carries the essence of buried floods from eons past. As the massive block above dislodges in the storm's frenzy, triggered by lightning-weakened supports, a physical cataclysm erupts with boulders cascading in a deadly torrent, forcing you to dive aside into a narrow crevice between stones, your body scraping against jagged edges that tear at your tunic and skin, panic clawing at your mind as screams from the gang mingle with the rock's grinding symphony, the weight of falling debris pinning a nearby worker's leg in a crunch that echoes your own terror. The macabre irony of it, an avalanche of ambition's excess burying the builders alive, crafting their own unintended tombs worse than a corporate merger gone wrong, where mergers swallow careers, but at least you get a severance package instead of being sealed in stone for eternity. Folded into this roaring mayhem is a factual pulse from the 4th Dynasty's perilous peaks around 2580 BC. Construction hazards like these rock slides were rampant during the wet seasons, when Nile floods softened the ramp's mud brick cores. Yet Pharaoh Khufu's engineers pressed on, using counterweight systems of sand-filled sleds to balance loads, all to ensure the pyramid's sides sloped at a sacred 51-degree angle symbolizing the rays of Ra descending to Earth. A fascinating tidbit rushes through your panic-stricken thoughts. Workers occasionally deployed woven reed mats rolled out like carpets over unstable sections, not for comfort but to distribute weight and prevent slips, drawing from the same materials used in fishing nets along the Nile, as if capturing fish could somehow net safety from the sky's falling wrath. Scholars still clash over the frequency of such disasters. Were they rare anomalies as official inscriptions boast of divine protection, or commonplace cover-ups, with seismic data from Giza suggesting frequent tremors amplified by the plateau's unstable limestone layers, leaving the death toll as uncertain as the sands that conceal it. You spot the boy amid the chaos, that Nubian youth whose redemptive hand reached out moments ago. But with a harrowing twist, he's not fleeing but shielding the same elder he aided, using his small frame to push the man into an alcove, revealing his earlier betrayals were feigned under duress from Amenhotep's spies, now exposing a core of unyielding loyalty that shines through the dust like a buried gem, bridging the isolation's cut with a surge of renewed trust. The chain's snagging bite intensifies as you scramble deeper into the crevice, mutated by embedded shards that prick like needles, sinking with the panic pulsing in your chest, while the Nile's dusty cloud evolves further into a suffocating veil that stings your skin with abrasive grit, a sensory motif that crawls over you like invisible insects born from the avalanche's birth. A shocking grief strikes when the rocks claim another victim before your eyes, a young woman from your gang crushed partially under a boulder, her hand outstretched in a final, futile grasp toward safety, lightly dramatizing the sad helplessness of a life snuffed out in seconds, empathy crashing over you like the debris itself for this sister in chains whose dreams of Nileside freedom vanish in the crush, leaving only a muffled whimper that haunts the roar. Light sarcasm flickers in your frenzied mind, splendid engineering marvel, where the only stable thing is the certainty of collapse, because nothing tests structural integrity like sacrificing the crew, much like those budget airline flights where turbulence feels personal. But here the pilot is a dead king, and the landing is permanent. Zooming out in a turbulent poetic gasp, the ramp transforms into a raging river of stone cascading down the pyramid's flank, like tears from a wounded colossus, thunder echoing as if the storm weeps for the buried, the vast Giza horizon blurred by dust devils spinning tales of forgotten falls under an uncaring sky. You emerge from the crevice as the avalanche subsides, coughing up silt that tastes of ancient riverbeds. The chains pricking now, a throbbing reminder mutated by bloodied scrapes. But panic doesn't fully ebb as aftershocks rumble, loosening more pebbles that patter like ominous rain. Suddenly, Amenhotep charges up from below, the overseer whose wooden leg you've glimpsed in flashes, but twisted profoundly. He's not berating survivors, but clawing at rocks with bare hands to free the pinned worker, his prosthetic splintering in the effort as tears streak his dust-caked face, unveiling that the avalanche echoes his own past loss. His brother perished in a similar slide years ago, turning his stern facade into a mask cracked by recurring grief, humanizing the taskmaster into a fellow victim of the pharaoh's insatiable hunger. The Nile's veiling dust settles slowly, carrying a lingering haze that blurs edges and muffles cries, a sensory struggle that disorients as you join the dig, hands raw from prying stones that feel unnaturally heavy with embedded sorrow. Clever commentary surges amid the adrenaline air, the thrill of unplanned renovations, where nature redesigns the ramps for free, akin to a software update that crashes your system mid-project, wiping progress and people alike. The group unearths the woman too late. Her still form a sad anchor that weighs the air, empathy deepening into a collective hush, broken only by sobs, the shocking reality that avalanches don't discriminate, claiming the steadfast as readily as the weary. Another tidbit surfaces through the haze. Ancient crews sometimes invoked protective spells carved on talismans of faience, blue-glazed beads mimicking the Nile's waters to ward off Earth's anger, as if pottery could placate the plateau's seismic whims. The academic wrangle persists on engineering flaws. Did internal ramps within the pyramid mitigate external risks, as some CT scans of the structure propose, or were surface perils inevitable, with quarry scars indicating frequent repairs that history glosses over in favor of triumphant narratives? Your modern lens amplifies the panic's residue. It's like surviving a stock market crash, where fortunes tumble in seconds. But here the currency is lives, and recovery means stacking more peril atop the ruins. Zooming out once more, the pyramid stands defiant amid the settling dust, its tears scarred anew like battle wounds from a war with gravity, the Nile's distant gleam piercing the haze as a mocking lifeline, storm clouds retreating to reveal stars that wink knowingly at the chaos below. As you haul the injured away, the chain's throbbing evolves into a dull echo of the avalanche's roar, the boy's shoulder brushing yours in silent solidarity, forging strength from the surge of panic that nearly consumed you all. The overseer's broken prosthetic lies discarded like a shed skin, symbolizing vulnerabilities unearthed in crisis, and as torches flicker to life in the gloom, assessing the damage, a psychological chill burrows. What if this avalanche is merely a prelude? The pyramid's hunger awakening to demand more sacrifices in its unquenchable rise. The scattered rocks form eerie patterns on the ramp, resembling twisted hieroglyphs, spelling out warnings in stone, shifting the mood toward a wary reconstruction laced with the ghosts of those just interred. Did you know that in the shadowy underbelly of pyramid construction, small acts of defiance like sabotaging tools or feigning illness sparked whispers of rebellion among the workers, with archaeologists uncovering hidden caches of broken chisels that suggest organized resistance around 2580 BC, leaving us to ponder how close these enslaved souls came to toppling a pharaoh's dream before it pierced the sky. You feel the flickering hope amid agony as you huddle in the dim torchlight of a secluded crevice near the pyramid's base. The flames' erratic dance casting elongated shadows that lick at the stone walls like tentative tongues of fire, warming your chilled skin just enough to stave off the night's bite while the chain's bite mutates into a subtle warmth from the shared body heat of your small group. The iron links now pressed close in secrecy, absorbing the collective pulse of hearts beating faster with forbidden words. The Nile's filthy aroma drifts in on a nocturnal breeze, evolving into a smoky veil mingled with the acrid scent of burning resin from the torches. a sensory struggle that stings your eyes and throat with each hushed inhale, turning the air thick with a conspiracy of damp river rot and illicit fire, as if the gods themselves exhale warnings through the haze. As the group comprised of the boy, the redeemed Nubian whose loyalty shone in the avalanche's wake, and a handful of weary souls, including the elder he shielded exchanges, murmured plans under the cover of post-disaster confusion. A physical spark ignites when a guard's distant footfalls echo closer, forcing you all to freeze in mid-sentence, your hand clamping over the boy's mouth to muffle his startled gasp. Panic flaring anew as the torch sputters, threatening to extinguish and plunge you into betraying darkness. The tension coiling in your muscles like overwound ropes ready to snap. Oh, the sly irony of it. Whispering rebellions in the dark to dismantle a monument built for eternity, while your own fleeting lives hang by threads thinner than papyrus scrolls, worse than plotting a workplace walkout in a toxic office, where at least you can email HR instead of risking the Nile's crocodiles for a single defiant word. Folded into this clandestine gathering is a factual murmur from the Old Kingdom's hidden fractures during Khufu's era around 2050 BC. Such whispered uprisings were fueled by seasonal influxes of conscripts from distant gnomes, who brought tales of freer lives along the Nile's upper reaches, organizing in the shadows to slow progress through subtle sabotages that delayed the pyramid's completion by months, all in quiet homage to their own suppressed deities. A fascinating tidbit flickers in your mind like the torch's flame rebels sometimes concealed messages in bread loaves, baked with hidden symbols etched in dough, using the same Emma wheat rations to pass notes undetected, as if sustenance could double as subversion against the overseer's watchful eyes. Historians still debate the scale of these rebellions, were they isolated grumblings as royal decrees portray, or widespread networks evidenced by tool hoards found in worker villages, with papyrus fragments hinting at suppressed trials that ancient scribes scrubbed from the record to preserve pharaonic infallibility. You glance at the boy, whose earlier feigned betrayals now twist into a badge of cunning. He's not just a survivor, but a scout. Having overheard Amenhotep's own mutterings of discontent during the avalanche rescue, revealing the overseer harbours secret doubts about the pharaoh's divine right, turning his authority into a potential ally rather than eternal foe, a surprising pivot that kindles hope amid the agony of your bruised body. The chains-warmed mutation pulses gently now, syncing with the group's rhythmic breaths, but the sensory assault mounts as resin smoke curls thicker, irritating your lungs into suppressed coughs that threaten to betray your position. The Nile's smoky veil mutating further into a choking embrace that blurs vision and heightens the paranoia of discovery. A shocking sorrow pierces the whispers when the elder recounts his son's fate dragged to the quarries years ago and never returned, his voice cracking in light dramatization of paternal loss that mirrors your own buried fears for kin left behind. Empathy swelling in your chest like a rising flood for this man, whose hope flickers not for himself, but for the generations chained after, leaving tears to mingle with the sweat on your face. Sarcasm whispers through the haze like a sly companion. The empowerment of midnight plotting, where dreams of freedom taste sweeter than the pharaoh's forbidden honey. Because nothing unites the oppressed like scheming under stars that once guided freer nomads, much like those underground forums today, where whistleblowers rally against corporate giants. But here the delete button is a whip's final crack, zooming out in a flickering poetic hush. The crevice nestles like a hidden wound in the pyramid's vast body, torches painting golden flecks on stone that echo the distant stars in different watch. The Nile's nocturnal hum, a lullaby laced with rebellion's undertones, weaving through the desert's silence like threads of fragile defiance. You contribute a plan, suggesting to tamper with the ramp's supports during tomorrow's repairs, your voice low but steady, the chain shifting warmly as you gesture, its mutation now a comforting weight that binds you all in shared resolve, while the smoke sting evolves into a ritual incense that sharpens focus amid the agony of lingering avalanche bruises. Suddenly, the boy spots a shadow outside, Amenhotep himself lurking near, but instead of raising alarm, he slips into the crevice uninvited, his wooden prosthetic thudding softly as he reveals his twist deeper. He's not spying, but joining. Driven by the avalanche's reminder of his brother's unmarked grave, his eyes gleaming with flickering hope that mutates his stern image into a reluctant revolutionary. forging an unlikely pact that electrifies the air. The Nile's veiled aroma carries hints of blooming lotuses from upstream, a rare purity cutting through the smoke, a sensory motif that teases illusions of renewal amid the dark. But the struggle persists as torchlight dances erratically, casting grotesque shadows that mimic the pharaoh's looming form. Clever commentary drifts in the tension because nothing spices up a rebellion like recruiting the boss, akin to flipping a manager in a Union drive, where alliances shift faster than desert sands under moonlight. The group seals vows with clasped hands, hope flickering brighter than the torches, but agony lingers in your ribs from the day's falls, a persistent throb that grounds the euphoria in reality's harsh grip. Another tidbit emerges amid the whispers. Ancient plotters sometimes invoked the god Set, Chaos Bringer, in covert rituals using red ochre smeared on stones, as if the desert's hue could summon disorder to topple order's monument. The scholarly tussle rages on about rebellion success. Did these whispers ever erupt into full revolts, as folklore from later dynasties claims, or fizzle under suppression, with artifact absences suggesting erased histories that favour the victor's tales? Your modern parallel illuminates the scene. It's like crowdfunding a coup on social media, where likes build momentum but one leak crashes the campaign. Yet here the platform is word of mouth, and failure means erasure from the annals. Zooming out once more, the pyramid slumbers under the moon like a dormant beast, its unfinished apex a jagged silhouette against the constellations, where Orion's belt aligns mockingly with the structure's base. The crevices torchlight a pinprick of rebellion in the vast night, whispering promises that echo across the plateau's windswept expanse. As plans solidify, the chain's warmth fades with the dying torch, mutating back to a cold reminder of bonds yet unbroken. The boy's grip on your arm an anchor of flickering hope amid the agony that refuses to yield. Empathy deepens for the elder, his stories weaving threads of lost families into the rebellion's fabric. The shocking truth that hope blooms from shared scars, not unmarred dreams. The group disperses silently into the shadows, Amenhotep vanishing first with a nod, leaving the crevice empty save for lingering smoke that curls like spectral fingers reaching for the stars. A psychological chill creeps in with the returning cold. What if these whispers ignite not freedom but a fiercer crackdown, turning flickering hope into the agony of dashed illusions? The torch's embers glow faintly on the stone floor, forming patterns reminiscent of scattered stars fallen to earth, shifting the mood toward a tense anticipation of dawn's revelations and the defiance it may unleash. What if the act of staring down an overseer's fury, eyes locked in a blaze of unspoken challenge, could unravel the threads of empire itself, much like the later strikes at Deir el-Medina, where two martisans downed tools in 1170 BC, demanding unpaid rations, proving that even in the shadow of gods, human wrath could halt the march of eternity and force pharaohs to bend. You feel defiance burning in your chest like swallowed coals from a forbidden fire, the heat spreading through your veins as you stand rigid before the head overseer Nabarman, a towering figure summoned by Amenhotep's whispers of unrest, his breath hot and sour with garlic-laced beer wafting over you in the pre-dawn chill, making your stomach churn while the chain's bite mutates into a searing brand, inflamed by the night's secretive huddles that left your ankles raw from furtive shifts, the iron now pulsing with the rhythm of your accelerating heartbeat as if absorbing the rebellion's fever. The Nile's filthy aroma rises thickly from the nearby canal, evolving into a fetid steam under the first hints of sun that carries the rot of discarded fish guts and human refuse. A sensory struggle that invades your nostrils and coats your tongue with a slimy film. Each breath a reminder of the river's deceptive bounty turned toxic by the Empire's excesses, turning your defiance into a nauseous blaze that fights for air amid the stench. As Nabarman's fist clenches around his bronze-tipped whip, a physical confrontation erupts when he lashes out not at you, but at the boy standing defiant beside you, the leather whistling through the air and cracking against the youth's shoulder with a sound like splitting wood, sending him crumpling to the sand in a heap that forces you to lunge forward, grabbing the overseer's arm in a grip fueled by burning rage, your muscles igniting in protest against the agony of yesterday's avalanche bruises but holding firm as the camp stirs with muffled gasps from onlookers hidden in the shadows. Oh, the absurd irony of it, confronting the wrath of a man who enforces a pharaoh's whims while his own belly growls from skimmed rations. building monuments to gods who seem as absent as fair pay, worse than arguing with a customer service rep who enforces company policy, but secretly hates the job. At least they don't wield whips instead of scripted apologies. Folded into this tense standoff is a factual sliver from the annals of ancient toil during the Old Kingdom's pyramid frenzy around 2580 BC. Overseers like Nabarman operated in hierarchies tied to the vizier's court, meting out punishments recorded on papyrus ledgers to maintain quotas that aligned the structure with celestial bodies like the North Star, ensuring the pharaoh's soul navigated the afterlife without delay from earthly delays. A fascinating tidbit burns through your defiant haze. These taskmasters sometimes carried amulets shaped like the Eye of Horus, not for protection, but to invoke surveillance, believing the symbol allowed gods to witness infractions, as if divine optics could spot rebellion before it flared, turning jewelry into tools of psychological control. Scholars still argue whether such confrontations ever escalated to full revolts in the Old Kingdom, with scant evidence from worker villages suggesting simmering tensions, but no outright uprisings like those in later New Kingdom eras, leaving the possibility of erased histories as debated as the pyramid's internal chambers. You spot Amenhotep lingering at the edge of the gathering crowd, the overseer who joined your whispers last night, now twisted in a surprising revelation. He's not intervening as an ally, but feigning loyalty to Nebamun by shouting accusations at you. His voice laced with coded warnings that only the initiated recognize. Revealing his wrath is a performance to shield the plot, turning his barked orders into a veil that buys time for the rebellion's sparks to spread undetected. His wooden prosthetic thudding emphatically on the sand as if punctuating the deception. The chain's searing mutation intensifies as Nebamun shakes free from your grasp, the iron yanking you back with a jolt that sends fire up your legs, sinking with the defiance scorching your chest, while the Nile's steamy rot mutates further into a cloying mist that slicks your skin and blurs the scene, a sensory motif that crawls like damp fingers over your exposed arms, amplifying the chill of potential retribution despite the growing heat. A shocking sadness unfolds when the boy rises shakily, blood seeping from the whip's welt on his shoulder, his eyes meeting yours with a mix of pain and unyielding fire that mirrors your own lost innocence, lightly dramatizing the tragic cycle where youth bears the brunt of elder rages, empathy surging through you like a dammed river bursting for this child, whose Nubian resilience now fuels the group's quiet resolve, leaving a lump in your throat that tastes of unshed tears mingled with the river's filth. Light sarcasm curls in your burning thoughts, splendid leadership, where wrath motivates like a morning pep talk, because nothing starts the day right, like a lash to remind you of your place, much like those viral motivational speeches that hype productivity, but ignore the burnout boiling beneath. Zooming out in a heated, poetic breath, the camp sprawls like a waking beast under the dawn's crimson streak, the pyramid's silhouette a jagged crown piercing the horizon where the Nile winds eternally, its waters reflecting the first sunrays like molten gold, indifferent to the chest-burning defiances unfolding on its banks. You square your shoulders as Nebamun advances again, his whip coiling like a serpent ready to strike. But the elder from your crevice huddle steps forward unexpectedly, his frail voice booming with tales of past injustices that hush the crowd, his intervention a physical barrier that halts the overseer mid-stride, defiance in your chest flaring brighter as murmurs ripple through the workers, turning individual anger into a collective ember that threatens to ignite. The Nile's misty cling evolves into a heavy dew that drips from reed roofs nearby, stinging your whip-scarred back with cold droplets that contrast the internal blaze, a sensory struggle that heightens the standoff's tension, making every muscle twitch with anticipation of the next move. Suddenly, Amenhotep interjects with a fabricated story of your loyalty in the avalanche, his twist deepening as he subtly signals the boy to slip away with a hidden tool for sabotage. His feigned wrath now a masterful diversion that confuses Nebamun long enough for the group to disperse without arrests. The overseer's confusion a crack in the armor of authority that fans your chest's burning defiance into a steady flame. Clever commentary flickers amid the adrenaline, the art of confrontational theatre, where wrath becomes a script flipped on its head, akin to a heated debate on social media where trolls get out-trolled, leaving the aggressor questioning their own rage. The crowd thins as Nebamun retreats with grumbled threats, But the sensory assault lingers with the Nile's dew now soaking your feet, turning the sand into a mushy trap that squelches underfoot, mutating the chain's sear into a soggy throb that weeps with every step. Another tidbit surfaces through the haze. Overseers sometimes rewarded informants with extra beer laced with lotus extracts for sedation, a bizarre custom to dull senses while sharpening loyalties, as if floral drugs could buy silence in a sea of simmering wrath. The debate among experts simmers on about Defiance's forms. Did Old Kingdom workers ever stage passive resistances like tool losses, as inferred from inventory discrepancies, or was overt confrontation rare, with later strikes providing the only clear models that retroactively colour earlier eras? Your modern lens sharpens the burn. It's like facing down a micromanaging boss in a staff meeting. But here, the PowerPoint is papyrus, and the fallout involves chains rather than awkward emails. Zooming out once more, the plateau awakens fully under Ra's gaze, the ramp snaking upward like veins of defiance pulsing against the pyramid's stone heart, where distant birds wheel over the Nile's glint, harbingers of changes whispered in the wind that carries the scent of rebellion's dawn. As you melt back into the work line, the boy's nod from afar reignites the chest fire. Amenhotep's glance a silent pact amid his performed wrath, the elder's hand on your shoulder a transfer of aged wisdom that tempers your blaze with strategy. Empathy deepens for the whipped boy, his resilience a mirror to your own buried pains. The shocking realization that defiance burns not just in anger, but in bonds forged from shared lashes, leaving the group to plot anew under the guise of toil. The chain's soggy mutation dries slowly in the rising heat, evolving into a familiar ache that grounds your soaring spirit, and as Nebamun's shadow recedes, a psychological chill tempers the burn. What if this confrontation awakens not victory but a wrathful retaliation, turning flickering hope into the agony of a crushed uprising? The whip's coil hangs limp from Nebamun's belt, swaying like a pendulum of fate in the morning breeze, its tip glinting ominously as if eager for the next swing, shifting the mood toward a defiant vigilance laced with the shadows of impending storm. Have you ever wondered if the act of breaking chains in ancient Egypt wasn't with hammers but with sheer exhaustion's collapse? Where runaway slaves face survival rates lower than a coin flip in the desert's maw, with estimates from tomb records suggesting only a fraction ever reached the Nile's southern bends alive, leaving the haunting question of whether freedom's grip was tighter than any pyramid's stone embrace. You feel the exhaustion weighing like lead in your limbs as you slip away from the camp under the cover of a pre-dawn haze, each step dragging through the cooling sand that clings to your sweat-dampened feet like reluctant shackles. The chain's bite now mutated into a phantom drag, even though you've pried it loose with a stolen chisel hidden by the boy during the confrontation's chaos. The absent iron leaving behind raw welts that throb with every cautious advance, pulsing like echoes of the pyramid's unyielding pull. The Nile's filthy aroma follows you like a persistent ghost, evolving into a faint brackish whisper carried on the wind from the distant river, a sensory struggle that teases your parched throat, with memories of murky sips now replaced by the dry, dusty void of the desert expanse, each breath drawing in grains that scratch your lungs and remind you of the filth you've escaped yet can't fully shake, as you and your small band, the boy, the elder, and a few defiant souls stirred by last night's whispers crouch behind a cluster of half-buried quarry rocks. A physical pursuit begins when distant shouts erupt from the camp, guards' torches flaring like angry stars as they fan out in search patterns, forcing you to bolt across an open stretch where exhaustion nearly betrays you, your legs buckling mid-stride in a near collapse that sends you sprawling into the sand, the impact jarring your bones with a dull thud that reignites old aches from the avalanche's crush. But the boy's quick hand hauls you up, his grip a lifeline amid the leaden weight threatening to anchor you forever. Ah, the weary irony of it, breaking free from a monument meant to defy time only to have your body timed out by fatigue's relentless clock, worse than hitting the wall in a marathon where at least aid stations offer Gatorade instead of mirages mocking your thirst. Folded into this desperate flight is a factual thread from the shadows of the 4th dynasty, around 2580 BC. Escapes from pyramid sites were rare, but documented in overseer logs as losses to the desert, where Pharaoh Khufu's security relied on patrols along the plateau's edges, channeling runaways toward the Nile's eastern banks where reed boats waited for those clever enough to steal them under cover of flood seasons. A fascinating tidbit lingers in your haze of weariness. Fugitives sometimes smeared their bodies with crocodile fat harvested from river kills. Not for camouflage, but to mask human scent from tracking dogs bred in the Pharaoh's kennels. As if reptilian grease could slip you past the jaws of both beast and bondage. Historians still debate whether such breakouts were individual desperations or coordinated efforts, tied to seasonal worker rotations, with some papyri suggesting Nubian conscripts led the way, due to their knowledge of southern escape routes. While others argue isolation made group flights improbable, leaving the truthers scattered as footprints in shifting sands. You press on as Amenhotep emerges from the gloom ahead. The overseer, whose feigned wrath in the confrontation now twists into a guardian role he's not chasing but guiding, having deserted his post after Nebamun's retreat, his wooden prosthetic sinking deeper into the sand with each step as he reveals a hidden cache of water skins buried for just such a night, transforming his authority's remnants into a surprising compass for your exodus, his eyes holding the exhaustion of a man breaking free from his own invisible chains. The chain's phantom drag fades slightly as dawn's light creeps in, mutating into a lingering itch from healing scabs that flake under your tunic, sinking with the leaden pull in your chest, while the Nile's brackish whisper grows stronger, now laced with the faint rot of marsh reeds ahead, a sensory motif that crawls into your nostrils and stirs a mix of hope and dread. The damp promise of water warring with fears of hidden patrols. A shocking despair hits when the elder stumbles irretrievably, his frail body giving out under the weight of years and yesterday's lashes, collapsing into the sand with a soft sigh that ends his tales mid-breath, lightly dramatizing the sad toll where exhaustion claims the wise before the young, empathy flooding you like a sudden oasis for this mentor whose shattered dreams now fertilize the desert, leaving you to cover his form with loose stones in hasty burial, tears mixing with sweat on your face. Sarcasm bubbles through your fatigue like a weak spring. Oh, the gracious exit package from pyramid employment, where retirement means becoming one with the landscape, because nothing honors service like an unmarked grave, much like those corporate buyouts that promise golden parachutes but deliver dirt naps instead. Zooming out in a weary poetic drift, the plateau recedes behind you like a fading nightmare etched in stone. The pyramid's apex a distant thorn against the paling sky where the first birds circle lazily, their wings scripting freedom's fragile calligraphy over the endless golden waves below. You gulp from Amenhotep's waterskin, the lukewarm liquid tasting of leather and faint minerals that ease the lead in your throat but not the heaviness in your limbs. Exhaustion weighing deeper as the sun climbs, turning the sand into a warming blanket that saps your steps. Suddenly, the boy spots a patrol's dust plume on the horizon, forcing a detour into a narrow wadi where rocks conceal but also confine, your group pressing against cool boulders that leach the night's chill into your back, the phantom chain's itch now a frantic scratch as adrenaline battles fatigue, mutating the sensation into a prickling alert that keeps you vigilant amid the doze threatening to claim you. Clever commentary drifts in your draining mind, breaking free feels like hacking a video game glitch. But here the cheat code is sheer willpower, akin to binge-watching a series through bleary eyes, where the plot twists keep you awake, but the ending looms uncertain. The Nile's reed-laced rot intensifies as you near the banks, the aroma now a welcoming decay that signals hidden boats among the papyrus. But exhaustion's lead pulls harder, your vision blurring at the edges like heat haze even in the morning cool. Another tidbit surfaces amid the plod, ancient escapees sometimes navigated by aligning with the pyramid's own stellar markers, ironically using the tomb's Orion orientation to flee northward or south, as if the stars conspired against their earthly jailers. The academic wrangle continues over escape success rates. Did most perish in the desert as skeletal scatters imply, or blend into delta villages, with folklore from later periods romanticizing survivors who founded hidden communities, blurring fact from hopeful myth? Your modern parallel weighs heavy. It's like quitting a soul-crushing job mid-shift, adrenaline carrying you out the door but burnout chasing you home, where freedom tastes sweet, but exhaustion demands its due payment in collapse. Zooming out once more. The wadi unfolds like a scarred vein in the earth's flesh, leading toward the Nile's silver thread that winds eternally through the valley, reeds swaying like silent sentinels guarding paths to uncertain havens. The the distant pyramid now a mere silhouette swallowed by the horizon's curve. As the patrol passes without detection, you emerge weaker, Amenhotep leaning on the boy for support, his prosthetic caked in sand that grinds with every step, the group's pace slowing to a crawl under exhaustion's unyielding grip, the elder's absence a hollow that echoes in your laboured breaths. Empathy lingers for the buried sage, his final whisper of "keep the fire," a mantra that burns faintly against the leaden tide, the shocking truth that breaking free demands not just courage, but the sacrifice of pieces left behind, scattering like grains in the wind. The chain's prickling alert dulls into a numb acceptance, mutating as sweat dries into salty crusts that flake away, and the Nile's decay blooms fuller, promising concealment in its marshy arms. The boy points to a cluster of reeds where a small skiff bobs hidden. Amenhotep's foresight from nights of planning, but reaching it requires one last push through sucking mud that pulls at your feet like the pyramid's ghostly fingers, exhaustion weighing like invisible ballast that threatens to sink you before the boat. A psychological chill settles amid the burn. What if this freedom is illusory? The desert's vastness merely trading one grip for another's endless leaden embrace. The skiff's hull gleams dully in the rising light, its wooden planks etched with faint hieroglyphs of forgotten fishermen. Shadows playing across the water like elusive justices dancing just out of reach, shifting the mood toward a fragile release tinged with the weight of what remains unbroken. And now, as the skiff drifts slowly into the Nile's gentle current, you lean back against the weathered wood, the exhaustion that once weighed like lead softening into a heavy blanket that drapes over your limbs, pulling you toward a rest long denied. The river's murmur a soothing lullaby that whispers of distances covered and burdens shed. The pyramid's distant form blurring into the haze like a receding spectre fading from memory. The boy's breathing slows beside you, his small frame curling in quiet repose as Amenhotep steers with weary strokes. The oars splash a rhythmic fade into silence, the Nile's banks slipping past in softened greens and golds, where reeds bow gracefully in the breeze, their tips brushing the water like gentle farewells to the toils left behind. Torchlight from imagined camps dims in your mind's eye, replaced by the sun's warming glow that scatters across the ripples like scattered embers cooling to ash. The chain's phantom echoes dissolving into the soft lap of waves against the hull, mutating finally into nothingness as muscles unwind and aches melt into the flow. Empathy lingers softly for those still bound, their struggles a distant hum fading like echoes in empty halls. The elder's voice a whisper carried on the wind that trails behind. Lessons of resilience etched not in scars but in the quiet persistence of the current bearing you onward. The desert's golden expanse recedes, swallowed by the river's embrace, horizons widening into endless blue where exhaustion yields to peace. The skiff rocking like a cradle in the stream's tender hold, silent now save for the soft sighs of breath sinking with the water's hush. And in this drifting calm, the world's edges blur, fading torchlight giving way to starlit dreams, until all that remains is the river's eternal murmur, a final, whispered secret shared in the night.